Okay, I declare this meeting open at 7 p.m. and ask you to please rise for the opening prayer. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, work and visit the city of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please remain standing as on behalf of the city of Burnside I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who gave their life for this country and its people. We also acknowledge and respect the traditional custodians on whose ancestral lands we meet. We recognise their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. Thank you. I welcome members of the gallery to this meeting and I ask them please to observe in respectful silence as the Chamber deliberates on matters that relate to the administration of this city. I also take the opportunity to remind elected members and members of the public in the gallery that all council meetings are recorded and live streamed through the City of Burnside website. And I remind elected members to assist each other and those watching to use their microphones when they speak. Should there be a fire or any other emergency, the alarm will sound. Please follow the directions of council staff. I welcome my colleagues to this final meeting of the 2014-18 Council. We've met, I don't know, 120 times or what, it's an extraordinary number of times we do meet. We've made some good decisions, we've made some that probably could have been better, but overall I think we've done an excellent job and I thank you for your services on behalf of the Burnside community. We have no apologies, there's no leave of absence. Can I have a confirmation of the minutes of the meeting we held on the 9th of October, taken as read and confirmed? Move Councillor Osterstock.
With an amendment where Henry and I declared a conflict of interest in the last minutes. It's been Henry's has been populated with my name in declaring the interest. It needs to be changed to Henry. Other than that, I haven't moved with those amendments.
Okay, you've picked that up, Robert? Thank you. So move, seconded. Seconded Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. My report is on page 9. Any questions regarding that report? Then kind of recommendation that it be received. Move Councillor Davey, seconded Councillor Lemon. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. I'll move around the chamber for reports from you, beginning with Councillor Osterstock.
No.
Councillor Monceau.
I attended the Lions Club art show on the 13th of October and supported motor neuron disease by buying a painting. I attended the Chinese Cultural Day in the library on the 14th of October. Hardly understood a word, but it was magic to watch. And I attended the Burnside Historical Society meeting on the 15th of October, which was about Muriel Matters, one of the leading suffragettes, both in South Australia and then went on to London, and worked with the suffragette movement there. And that was also attended by Councillor Wilkins. And I attended the final meeting of the South Australian Health and Local Government Association Working Party, advising on the new state public health plan on the 15th of October. That was the final meeting, and in fact the document is now ready and it will be going to Parliament in December as the new state health plan for 2019 to 2024. And hopefully it gets through Cabinet and will then become the basis of state planning for public health throughout South Australia. And I also intend to attend as a final service the Eastern Health Authority board meeting tomorrow night as Deputy Chair.
Councillor Bills, nothing to report. Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I attended the garage sale trail, the Grab a Bargain at Glenunga Hub, which was fantastic. And more people than last year, everybody having a really good time, and it was great to see the East Waste truck and the children lined up to have a look at how the East Waste truck works. Brilliant idea, brilliant thinking, whoever organised that. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkins.
I also attended the Lions Art Show. I did it on the 11th of October, and Burnside Historical Society, and I concur with Councillor Monceau on the interesting lecture on Muriel Matters by Francis Bedford? Bedford. I always want to call it Redford. And I went to a fundraising luncheon at the Glen Osmond Golf Club, which is an amazing place up on the top of the hill. The guest speaker was Tim Wilson, the former Human Rights Commissioner, but he's now the member for Goldstein in Victoria.
Thank you. Councillor Davis. Councillor Piggott.
Yes, if I could report in advance, perhaps, given this may be my last meeting, that I will be attending a special board meeting of East Waste tomorrow night, and I also intend to attend the LGA conference on Thursday and Friday.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
I have nothing to report that I've been to. And this doesn't need to be recorded. I'll be attending a meeting of the final board meeting of the Burnside Hospital at the end of the month, and a strategic planning day this Saturday for the Burnside Hospital.
Thank you. And Councillor Lord. Councillor Cornish. Councillor Ford. Picking up on Councillor Piggott's prediction, I will also be attending the LGA AGM on the Friday, not the conference on the Thursday. There will also be a LGA audit committee that I will be attending between now and whenever. We have no deputations, we have no petitions. We have several questions on notice from Councillor, one on Code of Conduct from Councillor Osterstock. Miscellaneous questions from Councillor Osterstock. Standards and bylaws from Councillor Davey. Financial information and legal firm engagement from Councillor Ford, and the responses are provided to you on your desk. Move on to motions on notice. And Councillor Osterstock, you have a motion on page 11.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor and councillors, this being our last council meeting after 4 years in this place, I think it's appropriate, more than appropriate, that I move this motion and I ask for your support. My motion is that council acknowledge, thank and commend the activities, deliverables and achievements of the City of Burnside administration and the commitment and service of the staff over the last 4-year term from November 2018.
2014, I think you mean, Councillor?
From 2014. Thank you. And that council acknowledge that although there were inherent difficulties and a challenging political climate over the last 12 to 18 months, the administration have continued to deliver the services expected by the community and delivered against key strategies and plans for the betterment of our city. I think the motion is self-explanatory. Personally, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the CEO, Barry Cant, and in particular Martin Cooper, who has served as Deputy CEO for a variety of times in the CEO's absence. And in particular, I'd like to single out Rob Dabrowski for his efforts, tireless efforts, in managing everything that you manage, Rob, in this place. You are an excellent executive officer, and I'm sure that the CEO and his senior staff are very proud. Our IT manager, Matt Spearman, thanks very much, Matt, for your efforts over the last 4 years, and indeed to all middle management and staff in general. Thank you for your efforts over the last 4 years, and in my case, over the last 8 years. Your help, assistance, knowledge and commitment to our community is something that you all can be very proud of, and I thank you once again for your commitment and work. It hasn't been easy. Governance is never an easy task. It's a thankless task, but it's something that we enjoy doing because we enjoy delivering good governance to the people that we represent. And I think in the main, in the main that we have delivered that, despite the challenges that we've faced, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months. So I ask that you support the motion and send a message to our staff that their efforts are well and truly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osterstock. Councillor Seeker, seconder. Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I'm very happy to second this. I think this is an appropriate and proper thing and gracious to do, especially after 8 years. And I would add to that group of people ones that often don't sit at this table. There's Michelle Kennedy, who is our city engineer, who is a great example of science, technology, engineering and maths for women in this state. And I, for one, am very proud that Burnside has a woman in that position. And also Karishma, who is in our finance area, who hasn't been here for a long, long time, but has been brilliant at what she's done when she's done it. Of course, I endorse our others that have already been mentioned, and I have very much appreciated all the work that they have done for me personally, the phone calls on a Saturday afternoon, the getting the information when you need it. The people in the staff of this administration have made our jobs much, much easier, and I, for one, really appreciate it. And I think that in many cases, well, in all cases, I'd have to say, from my personal point of view, they've all gone above and beyond what their pay grade is.
Councillor Burnside.
I'd just like to move a slight amendment to number 2, and that is that over the last 12 to 18 months, the administration and staff have continued to deliver the services expected by the community and delivered against key strategies and plans for the betterment of our city. Because I think you cannot separate the staff who do the face-to-face contact with those and making sure that those deliverables are achieved.
Thank you, but with respect to administration, include meeting staff. Administration and staff are the same thing. I'll ask for clarification.
In the previous one it says separates, it talks about them both, and I just believe that it should be included in the second one as well.
Administration is staff. That's what
It says administration and...
Rather than take an amendment, Councillor Osterstock, can we clarify it in your original motion? You clearly mean, and I understand, administration, the equipment service of the staff.
That's correct.
You mean they're interchangeable for you, aren't they?
It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It means the same thing, but if it's going to be a deal breaker, put it in. Just add it in. Just add it in.
Yeah, okay,
I accept it.
Thank you. So, Councillor Monso, are you speaking to the motion now?
No, that's fine. That's all I wish to say.
So you have spoken.
I just wanted those 2 words.
So you moved it, yes, and we've done that. So thank you for speaking. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Bills.
I accept that we've all had a rather trying time over the past 12 to 18 months. Sometimes I don't think it's accepted and acknowledged the impact it had on me. I'm not going to raise that any further, but when one is left to do the whole lot by himself, it becomes fairly onerous. And over that time, the instances I did have to call on staff, not to assist, but to deal with issues that I was dealing with, I found them to be effective, competent, and they assisted me in those getting those achievements done. I also would like to thank, I think it's Helen Nickertons, is it? Is that, have I got the right spelling? From IT. On a number of occasions, this computer has been less than pleasant to me, and on those occasions she has been instrumental in helping me sort the problem out. I'm going to vote with the motion, but I do want to acknowledge that a couple of weeks ago, some information came out, circulated to all of us, which I thought was highly inappropriate. I'm not going to take it any further, but I want it acknowledged and just remembered that sometimes it's not right to do things because it does affect other people. Thank you.
Councillor Pickett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Osterstock, for raising this motion. I'm certainly happy to vote with it, and I think it is appropriate that we do acknowledge at the end of any 4 years, perhaps, the fact that we come in here every couple of weeks and we've got several hundred pages of reports that have been produced and pretty much covering every nook and cranny of an issue for us to review and come in over the top of and debate and pick holes in, and that's actually quite a nice place to be. And so I think administration, and behind that, of course, there's all the stuff that actually does happen at councils, that keeps a $40 million, 40,000 people organisation rolling. So I think it's absolutely appropriate, and I'm happy to support it. I would like to, and look, all the people that have been mentioned, I would concur with. I did want to just give special mention to Martin Cooper, though. I feel about 18 months ago, actually, from something that perhaps I commenced, we threw him into a position on behalf of council that I feel has had quite a major effect on him. And in spite of that, he continues to work well for this city. He continues to excel, I feel, as a general manager of the city of Burnside. And under those special circumstances, I think that's even more remarkable. So I really do want to acknowledge the work, not disregarding any others, but I particularly want to acknowledge the work of Martin Cooper over the last 4 years. Thank you.
Yes, I think things like this, it can be very easy to treat this as a motherhood statement and something which is, by and by or normal to do, and it's, said rather than procedure than from the heart. But I think in this circumstance, especially from the efforts that the staff have put in, particularly over, this last 2 years, this statement, I feel couldn't be any more true. And my appreciation especially goes out to the executive staff and what they've had to put up with, including Matthew and Martin and Barry in particular. And I think it's very easy to start thinking about the administration as robots or as a large organism without people behind it. And very unfortunately, they have been personally affected by this chamber and the events here. And it's very right that we acknowledge what they have gone through and allow them and accept that they are people as well. But on a further note, something which hasn't been mentioned is that of those staff members who do leave us from time to time, the positions that they go on to after leaving this council are often highly credited positions. And that's largely due to the leadership of our CEO. And what I've seen from any new staff member that comes in to the city of Burnside is that their development very quickly is vastly improved, and very quickly they're able to confidently sit in those two chairs and answer questions, and very quickly they're able to independently deal with elected members and those issues that they've presented with them. So I think that's a massive and a huge testament to the leadership from our CEO and the two general managers who sit here. And I wish those staff members who move on all the very best. And I think that under this leadership, they're getting extremely good skills, and I'm very proud of that they've been able to come into the city of Burnside and work and leave far more accomplished. And so I'd like to commend certainly the senior executive staff for their leadership and the training and the investment in time in those junior staff members who are now becoming highly proficient. And when I look at them now, I can see them being CEOs, and I can see them being future leaders of other councils. And I know that the characteristics that our executive team have imparted to them, they will also impart to those staff members under their care. So I commend especially the senior leadership for those qualities.
Thank you. Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Parkin. I concur with pretty much everything that's said. It's been a great 4 years. It has probably been tougher than the previous 4. It's certainly kept, I think, a few people on their toes. I do want to also add Magnus Heinrich to the list. Probably one of the toughest gigs in this job, looking after the whole parking infringements issues as well as development issues as well. So I'd like to make up a special shout out to him as well as everyone else that's obviously been mentioned, but Magnus hasn't already tonight. He's been a great assistance to a number of different issues in my ward over the last 4 years, and they couldn't have progressed without his leadership and guidance. And I would like to, none of us are guaranteed to be here for the next council. Some of us are choosing definitely not to be here, but I would like to definitely send my appreciation to all the administration. If I'm not back, you are astute professionals. I cannot talk about you highly enough, and thank you for all the support, leadership, guidance and advice you've provided to me. So thank you.
Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Wish. In the broadest sense, I too support the motion. I think there are many people who work in the organisation who do a tremendous job. I'd point to, for example, the IT changes that have come in our term and the efficiencies and benefits that have come with it, with one or two problems, I guess. I think, though, that it does warrant some comment, considering the turbulence that we have all faced. And, I'm firmly of the belief that people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So, I don't think it hurts to remind us that, we've had to deal with failed audits that were not revealed before the last election. We've had issues of $75,000 spent persecuting a tree pruner about a tree that was dying. Covert recording of conversations on the telephone and in person.
Councillor Ford, I object to that last remark in particular. I object to them all, but there is actually no evidence whatsoever has ever been produced to me or anyone else to support that, so I suggest you move on.
There have been the fateful emails of the 13th of December 2016 replicated, unfortunately, on the 7th of October this year. There have been issues around...
Councillor Ford, that means nothing to me or anyone around this chamber. Please be specific.
And there's also the issue of the way in which Section 121 was used to access the mutual liability scheme in 2017. There's the issue of Section 271, Part 6.
Councillor Ford, I don't think this is relevant to the motion because you can either support the motion or you speak against it, but you're not speaking against the motion.
Let me conclude, Your Worship, despite your many interruptions, that I'm pointing to the fact, and I could go on, there are many issues that are imperfect, and people will make mistakes, and some people have made mistakes, but unfortunately inside administration and outside administration, and I think some tolerance needs to be encouraged to ensure that there's no replication of those issues, and that things that could have been settled with a handshake would be done in that way in future.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. All I can say is your view on life and mine are very different. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I thank Councillor Osterstock for the motion. I think this is very timely as we hold our last meeting for a big 4-year term. It's been a very interesting 4 years, very difficult in some circumstances, the last 2 years in particular. And I would like to thank the whole of the administration from the top to the bottom for the work they do, for the cheerful, wonderful, helpful way they go about their jobs. In particular, the executive management and management team, and I also endorse the assistance that was given at very short notice when Martin Cooper stepped up to lead the council, lead the administration at a time of great difficulty. And I think it was a very difficult time for him as well. And he steered the council through some very difficult meetings and decisions and management. So I'll leave it at that. It's been a pleasure to serve on this council, and despite all the difficulties, I believe that at some stage, the difficulties, we have served the people of Burnside well. We have represented the city of Burnside in the state of South Australia, and we've done our jobs and done them well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Wood.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to follow and support Councillor Osterstock in his vote of thanks to the staff. I just want to say thank you to them all because they have enhanced the role that I've been able to do in representing my community. They have assisted me in all manner of ways to do the job that I've done, and I feel as though we've always done it to the best of our capacity. And in particular, I'd like to thank Paul, who has always been there whenever I've had a query. He's been there since 2003, when I first came onto this council. I also want to thank Barry, who's endured lots of discussions with me about various things throughout my ward, and I thank him for that as well. Martin has always been there for the query that I've had, as has Magnus. I've enjoyed working with the... I have really enjoyed, and I've gained a load of knowledge from working with Magnus and the planning team. And I'll for always be thinking about planning and how it affects our community that we live in. All of our communities, it is so vital. But I've also enjoyed the working with Karishma and the team. They've been I'm exceptionally proud that we have a very competent financial services team, and Michelle, as the engineer, what a role model for all the girls in our community. I think that's fantastic. And we have Ben and James, and there's a whole manner of people that support us in the role that we do every day that we are here. And I just say thank you very much, Mark, for bringing this motion to the floor, and I wish everybody well. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. Before I hand back to Councillor Osterstock to sum up, if he so chooses, I just wished none of us are guaranteed to be here in 3 weeks' time, but one I know won't be is Mark, because he is running for office, but not here. He's running for office in Adelaide Hills, along with my daughter. And if they both get in, the Adelaide Hills will have two competent people on council. So I endorse the comments that have been made, and Mark, to you personally, you have your own style. You're very good at debate. You have been a stalwart of this council for 8 years, and I wish you well when in Adelaide Hills, where I'm sure you will get elected. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for those kind words. Members, I won't dignify responding to Councillor Ford's totally outrageous and out of touch comments that are totally divorced of reality and fact. I won't bother to dignify those comments. Suffice to say, I'd just like to also thank Farley Taylor from our Community Services Department, Alan Harvey, our depot, James Brennan, property and facilities. Not an easy task, James, managing those community groups with their facilities and property that they lease from the city. And Helen Bordalizzi for executive support for all the help that she has given us in our time here. Members, I'd like to wish all of you all the best for the future, and good luck for those that are standing again. I'm sure you'll be successful in whatever you do. Actually, I bumped into Councillor Davey this afternoon, and she was out door knocking, and I actually managed to grab a vote for her earlier on in the day from a local resident, which was very fortuitous. Thank you very much. I commend the motion.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Are there any questions without notice? There are no motions without notice, so we move on to reports of officers, of which we have 5. Please signify if you wish to pull an item for debate. 14.1, the Ombudsman's final report. Councillor Piggott. Audit Committee minutes? No. Then can I have a recommendation according to the officers? Move Councillor Cornish, seconded Councillor Davis. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Annual Business Plan and Budget Timetable. Councillor Piggott, you wish to pull that? Draft Annual Report? No. Then can I have a motion, please? Move Councillor Lemon. You wish to pull that? Gledside Road naming request? No. Then a motion, please. Move Councillor Wilkins, seconded Councillor Piggott. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. So 3 have been pulled, and the first is the Ombudsman's final report. I have a material conflict on this matter, as I am a named person on this matter, so I will leave the chamber, and you will need to find an alternative chair.
Thank you, Mayor Parkin. As Mayor Parkin has declared a material conflict of interest, I need to have an acting presiding member for this item. Do I have any nominations? Councillor Lemon, are you...
I nominate Councillor Monceau. As aspiring mayor, I think she should be jumping at the chance to sit in the chair at this stage.
I think that I will decline, as I wish to speak on this matter, and I will ignore the insult.
Councillor Monceau, you as acting chair still have the opportunity to speak with the consent of the chamber. Do I have any other nominations? Councillor Cornish.
Is it possible for the CEO to...
No. So if there are no... Councillor Wilkins?
I was going to nominate Councillor Cornish.
Okay, Councillor Cornish has accepted, volunteered, throwing himself into the fire. So can I please have a recommendation that Councillor Cornish be the acting presiding member? Councillor Davey for this particular matter, seconded by Councillor Wilkins. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Welcome to the big chair, Councillor Cornish.
Councillor Piggott, your motion.
Before you move that, I can see what's coming up, so I'll declare a material conflict of interest under section 7.3, as I'm a person named in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
And before you start,
Councillor Lemon.
I'll
No.
declare a perceived conflict of interest since I am named in the report, and the way I'm going to deal with that perceived conflict of interest is remain in the chamber. I am going to participate in the debate and I will vote on the matter.
Councillor Osterstock.
Pursuant to section 73, given that this motion requires an action of council, I have a material conflict of interest as I'm named in the report, and so I'll be vacating the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Osterstock. And before you start, Councillor Piggott, I am also named in the report and will be declaring a perceived conflict of interest. I will be staying in the chamber, clearly, and I can't vote on it unless it's a division vote, but my name does appear in the report, so I have declared that.
Mr Acting Chair.
Councillor Ford?
Yes, I too would like to have on the record that my name is in the report in one place, and that may raise a perceived conflict of interest, but I do not believe that it is an actual conflict of interest, and I'll remain in the chamber.
Yep, thank you. I think there's a few of us like that.
Through the acting presiding member, Mr Cant and I, while we are named in the report, we have no voting rights in this matter, so we have no conflicts of interest because it's the recommendations of an independent authority.
Okay. Councillor Piggott, over to you.
And before I go to the motion, I too am named in the report, and I may have a perceived conflict of interest, although none of the actions I'm there as more of a bit player in reality. I will deal with that perceived conflict of interest by remaining in the chamber and participating in the debate.
Thank you.
And
your motion.
The motion I would like to raise is slightly expanded from what the recommendation ran, and perhaps it may be best if I first read it.
If you could.
If I can. The one, that the report be received. 2, that Council acknowledge that Councillor Bagster has resigned since the date of the Ombudsman's final report dated 13th of September 2018, resulting in his office becoming vacant as a result of this resignation, in accordance with section 54(1)(b) of the Local Government Act. 3, that Council note and adopt the recommendation of the Ombudsman in his final report by publicly reprimanding former Councillor Bagster for each breach of the Code of Conduct outlined in the final report. 4, that the public reprimand be made through Council minutes and on Council's website. 5, and the 5, 6, 7 and 8 is the expansion from the recommendation. 5, that Council note the further recommendation of the Ombudsman in his final report, that in the event that Mr Bagster is re-elected to the Council as a result of the 2018 local government elections, the Council write to Councillor Bagster and extend to him a period of 7 days in which to resign from office, at the expiration of which, if Councillor Bagster is not so resigned, the Council should ensure that a complaint is lodged in the District Court seeking orders that Councillor Bagster be disqualified from office and be disqualified from becoming a member of a council for a period not exceeding 5 years. 6, that Council note the recommendation under section 25(2)(f) of the Ombudsman Act that the State Government, 6.1, cause a review of the Local Government Act and Work Health and Safety Act so as to determine whether either act should be amended or more adequately address bullying or harassment committed by elected members, and 2, take such action as may be necessary to give effect to any recommendations arising from that review. 7, that Council Administration write to the Minister of Local Government advising them that the City of Burnside stands ready to assist the review as recommended by the Ombudsman. And 8, that Council Administration report to the Ombudsman by the 13th of January 2019 on what steps have been taken by the Council to give effect to the Ombudsman's recommendation. And speaking to that, Mr Presiding Member, I felt, having read the 173-page report, that this council needed to give it due service by really picking up all recommendations that your Ombudsman has run. The officer's recommendation picked up the one in regard to the direct action that the Ombudsman feels appropriate towards Councillor Bagster, given that he had found him that he had breached 12 had 12 breaches under the Local Government Act. And I feel I have not changed that, and I feel that is appropriate to this chamber and we should accept it. The second is that he was concerned that there may be a manner that perhaps that Councillor Bagster may return to this chamber through current local government elections, as is possible with the will of the people. It's important, I think, that this chamber notes the recommendation of the Ombudsman that whoever's sitting in this chamber following the elections, if Mr Bagster was successful, the recommendation is to take action to actually disqualify him from that office. And as we've seen before here, recommendations are more than recommendations when they come from the Ombudsman. The council would be duty bound to pursue that course of action. And finally, and I think if there's any positive to come out of this, it's the last recommendation where the Ombudsman is not shy in pointing out that the system is not really built to deal with situations such as we had. It's very difficult to deal with health and safety issues, which form a large body of law that most organisations or all organisations adhere to. It doesn't quite fit when it's in regard to or needs to be used in regard to a person elected to office by the people, and that is inappropriate. And the Ombudsman has recommended that the government actually look at that and see what can be done in future to make it a whole lot simpler to address, perhaps harder and earlier on, which perhaps could have avoided some of the, or I'm sure would have avoided some of the both angst and cost that has been incurred through this process. And I feel this council should, and I'm sure it does, even without this motion, but I feel we should reinforce that the City of Burnside going forward, having experienced this, should really, or is ready to actually contribute to whatever the government needs to find a solution to if this was to happen again. Number 8 is the clause that was as recommended, in that we do have a responsibility as a council to respond back to the Ombudsman, setting out what steps we've taken. So really what this does is provide a comprehensive, I think, summary of the recommendations coming out of that 173-page report, and we as a chamber, I feel, we as a council should pass this motion tonight and hopefully draw a line under this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piggott. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Wilkins.
I'm more than happy to second this motion, actually. And thank you to Councillor Piggott for actually adding in the points that are included on page 172 and 173 that are in the Ombudsman's report. I don't intend to say anything else, but thank you for spelling it out and actually ensuring that when this letter goes back to the Ombudsman and to the Minister for Local Government, that it is spelt out quite clearly what we think is the appropriate action that should be followed from this 173 pages of interesting reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Any debate on the matter? Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm certainly in favour of noting the Ombudsman's report. As I said at last meeting, a lot of resources have gone into this. I think it is clear that Councillor Bagster has erred. I think, though, that unfortunately the Ombudsman hasn't been had a briefing that's balanced, and there are many indications in the report that would point to that. Mr Bagster, it seems, has not had professional representation in his engagement on the matter, and so therefore not properly defended. I think with professional representation, a lot of balance could have been introduced into the consideration by the Ombudsman. For example, as far as I can see, most of Councillor Bagster's emails could have been described as nuisance, but certainly not threatening to the extent that has been brought into the equation by things like media releases and the like. Violence has not been threatened, it's been in fact denied on many occasions, and I think as well, there has been a breach of section 271 part 6 in respect to the Local Government Act, as the mediator provided a report that was subsequently used in the proceedings. So that is forbidden under section 271 part 6. So there are many other aspects to this. So the other thing is that I think that what this motion does is instructs a subsequent council to undertake certain actions, and I don't think that's the prerogative of this council to do so, so I wouldn't support it on that basis.
Councillor Davey.
I have a question. Thank
Certainly.
you, Mr Chair. I understand the significant personal cost to the Mayor, executive, the CEO and his team, management and the elected member body as a result of the matters that are discussed in this report. Those aren't quantifiable, but I wonder, has any calculation been made, or is there any estimate of the financial costs of this whole matter to the administration?
We're finding that out. I do believe it is in a footnote in the report as well, but that was obviously prepared sometime prior to the finalisation. Oh, okay. So this isn't outside. It's the cost to the council for this particular issue. Thank you. And it might be taken on notice. It might be a difficult one to calculate. So there are no legal costs involved with this particular matter. It was all staff time, which is extraordinarily hard to quantify. So it would be, a little bit difficult to calculate all the hours of different staff that have had to, provide, or search for emails and those sort of aspects, I'd suppose, yeah. Sorry, I can't provide anything a bit more clarity, but it is staff time only, and it's, the number of hours, it's hard to quantify given the size of the organisation. Yeah. Thank you. Any other debate on the matter? Councillor Bills.
Thank you, Mr. Standing. Just a couple of questions. I've always been concerned that we're being asked to reprimand somebody who is not under any sort of umbrella or control as is required of an elected member in South Australia. So where is the power for us to reprimand a normal member of the public? That was one question. The second one is, the recommendation from the Ombudsman was Councillor Bagster. Admin have now given us a report with former Councillor Bagster, obviously identifying that he is no longer a member, and don't you make reference to that in your recommendation. But I would just like to know where our power is to demand or to belittle a man even further in the public eye when he is not a member of an entity which caused his resignation from that entity. Can I have those questions answered, please?
Through the acting presiding member, at the end of the day, this council is now dealing with recommendations from the Ombudsman. Some of the recommendations predate Councillor Bagster's resignation, and if this council has a view that it's inappropriate to follow the Ombudsman's recommendations, then it should resolve so. It should ask the Ombudsman's office to have an internal review, or alternatively take judicial proceedings against the Ombudsman's decision. At this point in time, we're obligated legally to follow the Ombudsman's recommendations.
Couple more, Mr. Standing. Did we actually get any legal advice in relation to a matter that I wrote to you about, which was covered in that previous question?
Through the acting presiding member, no, I didn't need to get legal advice because the Ombudsman's authority transcends the Council's. As I said, if the Council has a belief that the Ombudsman is wrong, then the Council should resolve accordingly and tell the Ombudsman so, ask for either an internal review of his decision or seek judicial review over his decision.
Okay, Ta. In part 20, where it says that we can, if he does get re-elected, then we give him 7 days. That would mean if he was successful, we'd have to go to a by-election. Doesn't this place an incredibly onerous financial responsibility on a council when dealing with an ordinary member of the public who was running for an election as anybody else is entitled to? And it sort of makes a mockery of the whole system. If he is elected, we've got to say, oh, you can't, go away, we're going to run off to the district court, and now we're going to have to go back to another by-election. It just doesn't seem particularly intelligent or smart to me. So could it have been handled slightly differently? Should this have been presented to the new council for a determination? Should we be dealing with it now? That is my concern.
Thank you, Paul.
Through the acting presiding member, I don't think I can say this clearly enough. The Ombudsman has made recommendations. The Ombudsman required this council to deal with his report within 2 ordinary meetings of his report being presented. If the council has a problem with the Ombudsman's recommendations in respect of future actions by a future council, the council should resolve accordingly.
Thank you. Now I want to speak to it, Mr. Standing.
Thank you.
I appreciate and accept the answers given to my questions. They don't sit particularly well with me, and I think it's a bit of an odd situation and hasn't been presented to any council that I've been in for the past 14 and a half years. I don't concede for a second that the action or behaviour of the councillor was appropriate. It impacted a lot of people, and as I said before, including me. But it's sad that it got to this stage. But I think we need to accept certain aspects of it. I don't, and I won't vote for it, purely because it says we have to reprimand now a member of the public. And I do not see how that is appropriate or fair or balanced under the circumstances. And I also won't vote for it because I don't think it should be dealt with by a councillor at its last meeting when a new council will be implemented and sat in its chair a long time prior to part 8 was it, that we have to notify the Ombudsman. I think this could be forestalled, and I won't be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Beals. Councillor Monceau, you're next.
We are all aware of what's contained within this Ombudsman's report. And I will state, I do not and never have condoned bullying of any kind. I have objected to some of the processes that have been used. I support recommendations 1 and 2. I support the Ombudsman's recommendations. I don't argue with them, although I don't believe that he was given all of the information that was possible to be been given him. He does make a number of recommendations, but I will not support this motion because in numbers 4, 5, 7 and 8, there are aspects of this I don't agree with. Reprimand by means of a public statement does not require us to place such a statement on the council website. The reprimand can be certainly noted in the public minutes of this meeting tonight. He may be returned if the voters choose to vote him in. And if he is part of the new council, recommendations can be made accordingly by that council. Because from what I've read in this document, we must report, or the council must report, by the 13th of January 2019. By placing such a reprimand on the council website, we may be seen as trying to influence voters in this election. We are in caretaker mode, and by using this condemnation, we can be seen by the Electoral Commission as trying to influence voters, since Mr Bagster, not Councillor Bagster, is a candidate. See 6.2, 11.1 and 12.61 of our own caretaker policy as well. We would be acting contrary to this policy too, but I understand from what our CEO has said that the Ombudsman's report overweighs that. After the elections, the rest of this matter and these recommendations can be moved in a motion by the new council. There is still ample time to respond to what the Ombudsman says to the council, says the council should do, doesn't say must do, says clearly should do, by January the 13th, 2019. So I will not support the motion as it stands, but I do not defy the Ombudsman's should do.
Thank you, Councillor Monceau. Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I'll just begin by saying that as part of this paperwork on page 4 of the Code of Conduct for Council Members, which was an attachment to this submission, on page 4 it says, the Council must pass resolutions that give effect to any recommendations received from the Ombudsman within 2 ordinary meetings of the Council following receipt of these recommendations. So the Council is actually following the Code of Conduct for Council Members. But what I want to do is I'm assuming that everybody's read this report, but I want to actually highlight a few issues. And the first is on page 164, paragraph 587, where the Ombudsman states, and this is in direct refutation that Councillor Bagster, when he was Councillor Bagster, Mr Bagster, did not have the opportunity to put his point of view forward. I am unable to accept Councillor Bagster's submissions in respect of this issue. In my view, the communications considered by my investigations suggest that Councillor Bagster has no real interest in maintaining a respectful relationship with any of the elected members, and he perceives as acting in support of the Council's senior administration. In this regard, Councillor Bagster appears to have made no genuine efforts to understand or tolerate views different from his own. I will then move you on to page 171, final comment and recommendations. Over the period relevant to my investigations, Councillor Bagster has subjected council staff and several of his fellow elected members to an appalling course of behaviour. In many of his communications, and in his response to my investigation, presumably when he's been asked to respond, Councillor Bagster has sought to characterise his conduct as being in the greater interests of ratepayers. He is wrong, says the Ombudsman. Says the Ombudsman, his conduct has in fact resulted, quote, in an enormous waste of public resources. His behaviour has been entirely self-centred and counterproductive to the Council's efficient discharge of its functions. His behaviour falls far short of reasonable community expectations. And his behaviour, we'll go to page 166 if you like, paragraph 598. It is clear that Councillor Bagster has persistently attempted to influence several council employees to variously ignore communications protocols. And to arrange for items to be included in the council meeting agendas contrary to determinations made by the council's mayor. In his response to my provisional report, Councillor Bagster objected to my reaching the above conclusion, reiterated that he only made requests and stated my opinions. I do not accept this submission. Councillor Bagster's intention to influence the relevant council employees is manifested in the tone and frequency of the communications. And there's 2 more issues I wish to actually highlight. One is on page 149. Yes, 149, paragraph 491, where the Ombudsman states, "I am particularly troubled by Councillor Bagster's behaviour towards Mr Cooper." And he goes on, and I'll paraphrase, to talk about how council employees are actually accountable to the CEO, and through the CEO to the elected body, and putting individuals under siege is not on. And my final point is this, and it's one we would do well, all of us, to actually make note of. On page 140, paragraph 445, I am frequently struck by the patience and civility displayed by the Mayor, and I would like to thank the Mayor for displaying that patience and civility. Today, we were given an email, and on that email there's a synopsis of the ICAC annual report. I'll just give you the final line of this. I am pleased to say that the government has agreed to meet with us on the issue of bullying and harassing, and I am sure that the incoming LGA President will provide updates on future discussions. In this email, which is part of the LGA email we got, there are a number of issues raised by the Commissioner Against Corruption, and it is clear that we are not alone in Burnside for bullying and harassing, and I'm very happy to see that this is going to be taken up as a state issue. And I'm very happy to
timing,
see.
Councillor
Thank
Lemon.
you.
Your time is up. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I thank Councillor Piggott for his well-considered motion, and I'm happy to support this. Much has been said tonight with which I agree. I'd just like to, for the record, place, so everybody's clear, state what the statutory responsibilities are for a council member, just in case anyone's forgotten them. These are the state code of conduct for council members. Council members must show commitment and discharge duties conscientiously, act in a way that generates community trust and confidence in the council, act in a reasonable, just, respectful and non-discriminatory way when dealing with people, show respect for others when making comments publicly, ensure that personal comments to the media or other public comments on council decisions and other matters clearly indicate that it's a private view and not that of a council. Responsibilities of a member of council include complying with all council policies, codes and resolutions, dealing with information received in their capacity as council members in a responsible manner, endeavour to provide accurate information to the council and the public at all times. In their relationship with their fellow council members, we are required to endeavour to establish and maintain a respectful relationship with all council members, regardless of differences of views and opinions, and to not bully or harass other council members. In relation to council staff, we shall not bully or harass council staff, and their requests for information must be made through the council's chief executive officer or nominated delegate. There's a distinct process for that, and we must direct all requests for work or actions by council staff to the council's chief executive officer or nominated delegate. And finally, we have a responsibility to refrain from directing or influencing council staff with respect to the way in which these employees perform their duties. I rest my case. I hope you'll all support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Lord, I believe you're the only one that hasn't spoken. If you wish to speak, you can. Councillor Piggott, would you like to sum up?
I would. Thank you for that. Look, I think it's quite important we do pass this tonight. I think it's a situation that started under our watch, and I think we have the opportunity to, like I say, draw a line underneath it, pretty much anyway, subject to what happens into the election. But I'll come back to that. I'd like to talk to the three people who have spoken to the motion and would appear to not support it for various reasons. And Councillor Ford, I feel the claim that it's not balanced probably needs to be revisited. The Ombudsman holds a very high and independent office in this state. It may be true that Councillor Baxter was not professionally supported, but certainly the report does talk about that he did make submissions to the Ombudsman, and when you consider that the emails could be considered nuisance rather than harassment, I think that's probably true in isolation. One could be a nuisance, but when they come in at a fairly rapid rate, which they did during this period, then it does become harassment. On the violence angle, yes, I think violence was not necessarily threatened, but again, bullying and harassment doesn't require physical hurt. There's a lot of damage that can be done to people without actually touching them. And so I do feel you should consider supporting this motion. I do think it is actually quite a balanced review of what went on, of all the documentation, and the Ombudsman does not take decisions lightly, and these are his recommendations. Councillor Bills talks about we shouldn't instruct future councils to do stuff. Well, actually, I reckon we probably do that quite a bit. We've made quite a lot of decisions over the last year, particularly, and perhaps going back further, that effectively lock future councils in to do things. Future councils can overturn them, but certainly it's not a rule, the fact that councils can't make decisions that will obviously have an impact going forward over the end of their term. And that's what we're doing here. We're reprimanding a normal person. Well, yes, we are, in that he did resign in December. But I think that's September, sorry, that's a convenience that such is this report and such is the impact of his actions. It wouldn't be right if it was that easy to just, for what has happened here, what's been independently reported from the Ombudsman, goes away on the fact that he's tendered his resignation. The fact that the city brought about his resignation, that's not true. He took the decision, but in fact, all the actions in that report were his actions. We didn't bring this around. He brought this around. It will cause a by-election if he's elected. That's true. And that is what it is. It's important that people know that when they consider their votes, but that is what it is. I think also it's relevant that he hasn't been at a council meeting since September 2017. Over a year, he has not attended a council meeting. And I would think perhaps consideration would be whether he would attend them if he was elected this time. Councillor Monceau said it was sad that it got this far, and I don't think anyone here disagrees with that. I think it is a very unfortunate situation that did get out of hand, and the levers that can usually get pulled to bring these things to heel were just not available to us, and that's really where the third recommendation came from. But at the end of the day, we have had it is a 173-page report from the Ombudsman. He is not a person for taking sides. He is there to consider things from a very high level, and that's what he's done. And what this motion does is actually word for word document what his recommendations are. You may not agree with 4, 5, 6 and 7 that I've put in there, but if you don't, that's effectively you're not agreeing with the Ombudsman, because those 4, sorry, at least the ones I attribute to him, 4 and 6, those are directly from the Ombudsman report. All I'm saying is that in respect to the review, that Burnside should actually contribute to. And I doubt anyone here disagrees with that one. And I doubt if any of our elected members after this election will disagree with that one either. So
Thank you,
I feel it's
Councillor.
appropriate that we actually vote for this unanimously.
Your time is up. Thank you.
you.
I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is tied. I get a deciding vote. I will vote for the motion as it stands. the Ombudsman has made it quite clear. I did read this report in detail. I was quite disgusted at some of the bullying and harassing that has certainly occurred, and the Ombudsman has upheld that. I also believe the motion, it is extraordinarily important that the Local Government Act be revised and address this issue for future councils. The fact that both Safe Work and Safe Work Australia and Safe Work SA, Fair Work Australia, thank you Councillor Davey, both were unable to assist a council in this manner because it's an elected member versus a staff member or staff in general is absolutely appalling. The fact that, you know, there is this absolute and utter vacancy or black hole in Australian society where bullying and harassing is allowed to occur. I will be voting for this motion as it stands for those reasons. There is a lot of information in here, and the Ombudsman has, in my mind, absolutely found so. So I'll vote for this motion. So the motion is carried. A division has been called by Councillor Davey. All those in favour, if you could please stand. So they are Councillor Lemon, Councillor Wilkins, Councillor Piggott, Councillor Davey and Councillor Cornish. On the casting vote, Councillor Cornish, that is. And against is Councillor Monceau, Councillor Bills, Councillor Lord and Councillor Ford. The motion is carried.
Can I just interrupt, Mr Presiding Member, Acting Presiding Member, CEO? Could I ask that a copy of this motion go to our local Member of Parliament, who happens to be the Attorney General? Thank you.
You can do that yourself personally if you wanted to from the minutes.
I'm trying to get the Mayor's attention. He's sort of dawdling in the corridor. I don't need your help, Hartley.
Dealt with 14.1, 14.2 has been dealt with, 14.3, the annual business plan and budget. Councillor Piggott, you're at it again, page 207.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to propose a motion which is slightly different from the recommendation. You'll be familiar with my practice of doing this over the last 4 years, so why should we not continue on the last meeting? I do rely on my worthy signer. Yes, thank you. 14.3. So we can tidy that up a bit. What it's going to read is, one, that the report be received, two, that the proposed 2019-20 annual business plan and long-term financial plan timetable be adopted with the inclusion of workshops prior to the end of January 2019 to provide elected members with the following. One, summarised knowledge of Council's operational budget, including highlighting of key expenditure areas, and two, review of the findings of the BRM Holditch efficiency and effectiveness reports. And really that's I take your point, it was probably a fairly innocuous piece of business for the last meeting, but I do think it is important that with an incoming council, and what happens with an incoming council is that you do, the budget's on you pretty fast when you hit this chamber, and a key piece of information in any budget, and the focus at the end, and that's right, is really around the discretionary spend and what we've got available to us to perhaps, you know, do at our discretion. But a lot of what council does is locked in. You know, far and away the majority of the operational budget is locked in. It's watering verges, it's sorting out parks, it's doing all that sort of stuff. It's replanting trees. It's underpinning the library. And what I think would be useful in the exercise for the business plan is to actually have a session where we did look at what they do look at, let's not be presumptuous, that at what does make up that $40 million budget. Where does the money go in an overall sense? Where are the big plays in particular in expenditure? For completeness, I'm sure the staff will add in revenue as well, but it's particularly expenditure I am after. I think that's an important part of a budget process that, given there'll be at least 5, I think, new people sitting around this chamber, that will be extremely useful for them. The second bit is that the efficiency and effectiveness report that BRM Holditch produced, I think at the start of 17, correct me if I'm wrong. It's not that old, it's a couple of years old. We did some work on it, we pulled some things out and saw whether we could do something with it, but it was actually a very good report in a number of ways. It listed all the things that Council does. It listed them in order of things that perhaps it doesn't need to do. And it did give quite a shopping list, I suppose, of perhaps things if people want to take a crack at the budget that they might consider, have the chamber consider. So I think that would be useful to the new councillors and in fact any of us who may return in the process of putting the budget together next year. So that is my motion. I commend it to you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Ford, do you wish to speak to it?
Just briefly, Your Worship. Yeah, I do support the notion of the business plan and the long-term financial plan being considered simultaneously. I think it's the most logical process, and for a long time it's been quite a concern of mine that they're dealt with separately, and I think therefore it's certainly going to be quite a task for a new council to deal with at an early stage, but I think they certainly both need to be considered together.
Thank you. Councillor Monsup.
I just wish to say that I support the motion, and I think that it is important that both of those are proposed and adopted and looked at together. Any workshops that will help new or old councillors to understand and to review knowledge about operational budget is worthwhile, and I commend it.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. In line with I just have a question. In line with the timetable on page 210, I just wondered when provision's been made for the EMs to have an opportunity to present their projects and ward issues within the budget. Within that budget process.
You wish to respond to that?
Through the Chair, if you're speaking about the budget proposals that the elected members put in every year, it starts from the 6th of December until the 31st of January. So it's about 2 months.
And a follow-up question, if I may. When will Council consider the applications for rates rebates?
Through the Chair, the discretionary rate rebates will be tabled at the 11th December Council meeting.
Any further debate? Then I close the debate. Councillor Piggott, may I put the motion? I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. And Councillor Ford, you've pulled the draft annual report, page 215.
Thank you, Worship. The report, I think, raises some concern for me, really. In the first instance...
Point of order. Has the member moved the report?
No, not yet. What's your motion?
I'll withdraw from speaking to it.
Okay.
At this point.
Is anyone else?
We need a motion.
No, we don't. We can just move the officer's recommendation.
I'll formally move the officer's recommendation.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor, all those in favour? Against?
Yes,
It's carried.
and I'd like a division, thanks.
Well, I know it was not pulled for debate.
But I don't have to agree to it.
Now, you voted against it. Yeah, that's. Oh, you called it a division. Okay, a division has been called, sorry. All those in favour? Those in favour are Councillors Osterstock, Lemon, Wilkins, Davis, Piggott and Cornish and Bills. And Monceau. Those against are Councillors Lord and Ford. The motion's carried. That concludes the reports of officers. We move on to section 15, of which only we have the Era Water minutes on page 411. Can I have a recommendation, please, that they be received? Move Councillor Piggott, second Councillor Davis. All those in favour, against, that's carried. And also a recommendation that the report from our independent member of the Era Water be received. Move Councillor Piggott, second Councillor Lemon. All those in favour, against, that's carried. Nothing on Eastern Regional Alliance. On council correspondence, this is a matter that in which we all have some interest, the recommendation is that the council notes the correspondence sent to DIPTI and its response.
May I just make a comment?
You may speak on the matter if you choose, yes.
I just wish to make a comment that
Yes.
last time council sent a letter to DIPT in relation to this matter, that intersection, it was followed by 2 deaths. And I only hope and pray that the result of this letter doesn't lead to
Well, if it does, we'll have to stop sending letters, because obviously one follows the other. But I agree with you, it is a major issue, and you could recommend that we note this.
I would like to recommend that we note this response from DIPT, not support their response, but certainly note that they have replied. Certainly not happy with the response.
Seconder, please. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Any other business?
Yes.
Councillor Bills.
This is the last meeting, and you made reference to one member who won't be recontesting. There were 2 others that won't be recontesting, and I think it would be appropriate if the Mayor could give them the thanks from the Chair, because they have presented and been valuable contributors for this council for the
Thank you.
past 4 years.
The context in which I spoke of Councillor Osterstock was different, because he is actually running elsewhere. He's not volunteering, going back to being Mr. But also thank Councillors Ford and Lord for their contribution over the last 4 years. No confidential items. I close the meeting at 8:23 and wish you all Merry Christmas.